When I open a new tab on my computer, my fingers move automatically to the search bar. YOU, enter, and it brings me right here. YouTube.com. I don't even have to fill in the rest of the word. It already knows. You. It is the MeTube, and I'm stuck. It's been about 10 years since I first got unrestricted access to the internet and began spending my waking and sleeping hours here. 10 years in the tube, being funneled into strange places in the middle of the night. 10 years letting my YouTube algorithm tell me what to watch, what to care about, what to spend my time on. 10 years spent staring into this distorted, ever-warping mirror. But maybe it's like the reverse of a mirror. Maybe I'm the mirror. Because a mirror is something that reflects reality. But I feel like if anything, I'm the one reflecting YouTube. My YouTube homepage shapes me. It shapes what I talk about with my friends, what I think about, what I spend my time on. I guess we shape each other, mutually correcting towards our continued relationship, the elongation of every moment I spend on YouTube. And it's worked! Boy, has it worked! Those 6-hour video essays, they add up. And the shorts add up too. It all adds up, and today I'm going to try to evaluate what it has added up to. In classic YouTube fashion, I am going to tell you a long-winded personal story about myself. It concerns video, agency, and the way into cold water. Here we go. Chapter 1, The Girl Who Loved Books. My parents never had to baby-proof the house. All they had to do was plop me in the center of a ring of books, and I would stay put. I had all I needed right there. Books were the beloved infrastructure of my world. I lived in a house with 100 doors, each of which swung open by the spine into other realities. Life was one big lucid dream, and I, an intrepid explorer of my own imagination. Even as I grew, as my brain grew into a more complicated and sometimes painful place to be, I always had books to both soothe my psyche and remind me what it is capable of. They were a way out of and back into myself. Video, on the other hand, came first as a trickle and then as a tidal wave. I had regulated bursts of screen time as a child. I watched TV, documentaries, and movies. My parents called me the girl who loved books.
The girl who loved books.
Because it was from an episode of Elmo's World that I really loved.
She lived in a house made of books, and at night she slept in a bed made of books. And I bet you know what she dreamed about. Rabbits.
Well, I love rabbits, too.
The TV had a unique way of captivating me. It was irresistible. But because my parents were attentive and careful about screens, there was infrastructure already in place that kept me from having to resist it at all. My relationship to video was already being kept in check. And so, reading remained the foundation of my artistic life. Until, at age 14, I got my first smartphone and a laptop that I could take home for schoolwork, allowing unfettered round-the-clock access to the internet, and most importantly, to YouTube for the first time. It was this moment that completely upended my relationship to art, reality, and myself. I remember the feeling of it. It was as if I had been on a raft my whole life, floating down a river. There had been rapids, sometimes, swoops and dips, and upheavals, but never before had I seriously worried about my ability to stay on the raft. And then the internet came like a great wave beneath my raft, this incomprehensible roar of pure pleasure, pure dopamine, overwhelmingly potent. Video and the wave overtook me. And suddenly, almost overnight, I couldn't read anymore. Or I guess I'll say I lost touch with the written word. I technically could still read. I could sound words out, I could string sentences together, but that process, the work of reading that had once been so fluid to me, was suddenly tangled and stunted. It would take me an hour of sustained, repeated effort to get through just one page. It felt like rolling a boulder up a hill. And it was not just mentally difficult to read, it was emotionally difficult to even try, because it would only remind me of what I had lost. Why put myself through that? You know, especially when I, as a child, had no sense of self-discipline built up yet, and I had just gained access to a shiny new button that I could just press to mentally escape any situation. And so, watching YouTube videos effectively replaced the role of reading in my life, and I conceptualized this, even as it was happening, as a tragic, disorienting personal loss. Why couldn't I have both? I didn't understand what was happening to me, and so, I mythologized it. It was like a dark fairy tale, like I had accidentally partaken in a bargain, a trick, a trade, the page for the screen, and everything that came with it. I conceptualized the internet as this godlike force that had knocked me to my knees. What was there to do but start praying? I sunk further and further into the comfort and stimulation of video, into fandom, into the company of YouTubers and parasocial relationships. And I grew so attached to it that it replaced almost everything else. There was one surefire way to feel happy, and in its absence I would get very depressed. It felt like a kind of withdrawal. And in the meantime, suddenly I had this extremely knotted up relationship to work and to reward. I struggled in school mostly because anytime I hit any sort of wall, I would give up and numb the shame by escaping into the world of online video again. The only time I could muscle through books was when I had to for my English classes. Occasionally, I was able to reach a flow state with them again, and it would feel the way that it used to. And each time, I would feel this ecstatic victory, but it would be lined with despair. Why couldn't I do this every time, I would think? Where did this feeling go? In college, I was an English major, mostly to keep myself in an infrastructure that forced me to read, but also because they have always been my favorite classes, and they demanded the type of writing that I was best at. I did the bare minimum amount of reading that I could do to get by, all while inhaling hours of YouTube videos per day. I was onto video essays at this point, and the ones I watched dictated my opinions on just about everything. I was a sponge. Around 21, I acknowledged to myself for the first time that something was seriously wrong with my relationship to the internet and that something needed to change. Since then, through repeated trial and error, I have somewhat detached from most social media. I don't use Instagram or Twitter, but YouTube was the first in, and it will be the last out. I'm 25 now. I finished a book last October for the first time in an amount of time that I am too embarrassed to reveal on the internet. Since then, I've been reading more and more frequently, something I'm really excited about and grateful for, but I still have a hard time getting the habit to stick. I still slip in and out of it all the time. I write a lot now. I read when I can. I still fall asleep to video essays every night. My laptop takes the place of a lover in my bed. Its glaring nightlight inches from my face. Chapter 2. The Light on the River. Last fall, in a state of denial about the changing seasons, I became obsessed with fixing what I perceived as a fundamental flaw at my core, that being my persistent cowardice around cold water. Here is what happens every single time I go swimming. Jumping in is pretty much out of the question unless it's the only way in or there's some sort of social obligation to do so. I am firmly a wader at heart. It's easy to submerge up to my hips, but once I get there, I hit a wall. I move in inches, slowly peeling off the band-aid, feeling the cold 100 tiny times rather than all at once and just once. Fully aware of how much easier that would be, even if it would be a little overwhelming for a second. I watch the water sway, I try to unstick myself, try to get out of my own way, I encourage myself, I bully myself, I try to persuade myself, and all the while my top half is getting cold in the air. The very cold that I'm trying to avoid has reached me anyways, and my bottom half is warming up, adjusting to the temperature of the water, a taunting reminder of both what I'm missing and how quickly the cold will actually pass, of how silly I am being for letting a couple minutes of discomfort stand between me and swimming, the greatest feeling in the world. At some point there will come a moment when my head goes quiet and my body takes advantage of it by launching forward into the water before I can think my way out of it. And then it's cold for a minute, and then it's wonderful. So anyway, last fall I was pushing myself to the limit by confronting this exact situation as much as physically possible. It was a chaotic time. I was working crazy hours and just starting to recover from an illness that I had suffered from all summer. I was running very much on fumes, and instead of using my free time to rest, I used it to find very cold bodies of water and force myself into them. It was during this stage of my life when I found myself at a river right before the sunset. It had been a long day at work and daylight savings has just passed, so the light was moving faster than I was used to. When it fell on the other side of the river, this amber evening light struck a small patch of water in shoreline across from where I was standing half submerged. And it was so beautiful. It was on fire. The water was on fire. It was so colorful. And because at this time especially I was a man of extremes, I decided that I had to be in that patch of light right now before it's gone and before everything's dark and it's gray and it's winter and And so I crossed the river on foot. It's pretty shallow, at least in this part, so you can get all the way there without properly swimming, but you do have to get pretty wet. And so I did. I muscled through the current and the cold, and then I was in the light, and I realized that being in the beam of light was a fundamentally different experience from watching something else be lit up by the beam of light. It's blinding and intense. You can't really see anything. In some ways, it's far less beautiful visually, but in other ways, it's more vivid and involved. Standing in the bright sun as it receded, I thought, maybe what I wanted was just to stay put and keep watching the colors change, not become the thing whose color is being changed. I had thought that to experience that light necessarily meant to be the thing lit up by it, but that wasn't entirely true. And I also thought This reminds me of Stage Crew. Earlier, when I was talking about how nothing made me happy in high school except for YouTube, that was an exaggeration for dramatic effect. Two things actually made me happy in high school, and they were YouTube and Stage Crew. I was the backstage manager of our theater department. I wore the headset and I directed the backstage operations during the show. And so, because of my job, I spent a lot of time standing in the wings watching the actors sing and dance on stage. And in doing so, I remember feeling a profound sense of comfort and certainty in my role. I was exactly where I was supposed to be, and I knew it. I loved singing and I loved dancing, but I have always had pretty bad stage fright. So there was this element of yearning when I watched from the wings. Like, oh, look at them doing that thing that I would find so scary. How exciting it would be to be the type of person who could do that. But in my adjacent proximity to their performances, I found vicarious exhilaration, and that was more than enough for me. I didn't watch because I sincerely wanted to be in the spotlight. I watched because I wanted to watch. I wanted to continue to yearn without having to do. And this and the memory from the river reminded me of my relationship to the people that I watch on YouTube. It starts and ends with watching. This is not a bug, but a feature. It's like the whole point. If I'm in a parasocial relationship with a YouTuber, I don't literally think of that person as my friend. What I want, truly, is to watch them. And on YouTube, I get to, for as long as I want, as many times as I want. It's very freeing to be able to sink fully into my attachment to someone without being witnessed doing so. One of the main appeals of a YouTube video to me, especially when I was very young and encountering it for the first time, is that you get to be in a kind of one-sided conversation with someone you find interesting or exciting, without the pressure of holding up your side of that conversation. I don't have to think up a funny quip or retort. I don't have to figure out my opinion so that I have something to offer when it's my turn to speak. I don't have to submit to potentially being judged by this person. I don't have to wonder whether they like me or not. I don't have to be accountable to them whatsoever in this relationship. A YouTube video simulates some of the exciting parts of human connection, and none of the scary parts. You can grow to know someone pretty well without ever having to be known by them. It's a very safe place to be. A couple years ago, I was hanging out on the waterfront of a city that wasn't mine. I had found a spot where I liked to go to write and draw. It was a small floating dock that was underneath a thin pedestrian bridge. So if you were down on the dock at water level, you could look up to the bridge and see people walking past above you, and they likewise could look down to see you. The dock was rarely occupied, though people would sometimes come to swim on it. But the bridge got a lot of foot traffic, making the dock an ideal spot for people watching. So one day I was doing just that. I was reclining against my backpack with my legs out and crossed, and I was wearing these sunglasses. A woman walked past on the pedestrian bridge, and as she did, she was watching me, clearly presuming that I was asleep because I was reclined and still and she couldn't see my eyes. And so as I watched her watching me, I felt this surge of, I guess the word is power, but that feels almost too severe or too egotistical. It was more like energy, light, the same sense of alignment that I used to feel in the wings during a performance. We were making secret eye contact. She thought that she was watching me without me knowing, but really I was watching her without her knowing. We were watching each other and only I knew it. As she neared the end of the bridge, I wanted to acknowledge the moment somehow, and so right before she looked away, I grinned at her. She jumped, taken aback, and then smiled back sheepishly, clearly a little embarrassed, closing the circle of mutual acknowledgement. It was one of the most intimate moments I've ever had with a stranger, us both realizing that instead of just watching, we were seeing each other. Watching a YouTube video, to me, feels like the secret eye contact that I had with this woman right before I smiled at her and broke the spell. Watching implies a one-sidedness. If you're watching, you aren't being seen. Ironic, because you are very much being watched when you're on YouTube, but that's for a different day. When I'm watching a YouTube video, I get to look into someone's eyes without the part of eye contact that actually can be frightening and vulnerable. The feeling of someone staring into your soul, the feeling of someone seeing you. Instead, I can just watch. Invisible, in the shadows, in the wings. I don't have to be here. Chapter 3, why don't I want to be here? I think for a long time, longer for sure than my relationship to the internet, I have felt a perceived lack of self, an absence at the center of my belly, a limp, blank darkness, where you would usually find the glowing light of a human soul. Even as a kid, even when I had this rich relationship to my inner world, I always felt like my existence in the external world, especially as a social being, was somehow fraudulent. This sneaking suspicion that I am only pretending to be good, that I am only pretending to be a person, that I am only pretending to be real. And if anyone looks too closely, they will be able to see the truth, that what I am actually is nothing. I think everybody probably feels this way to some extent. I don't know, do you? Leave a comment if you do. It feels to me, especially now that I've lived in my head for longer than 2 decades, like a mirage born from fear. It's something like the fear of being. I think I'm afraid to really live because doing so acknowledges that I am going to die, and I'm afraid to die. We've arrived. Like, if you're not in the habit of seizing the day, you can kind of get away with pretending that there's no need to, that there will always be days, and you can just seize a different one later. Death is a motivator to live intentionally, at any scale available to you, of course. If you avoid the idea of death, you might also avoid living as though you will die, which is to say, living as though each day is special and important, and deserving of your attention, and on a cosmic scale, rare enough to take seriously. Anyway, that's what I think my fear of being, of expression, of self comes from. And I think that video, particularly in the way that I have used it, kind of serves to both soothe and nurture this fear. It allows my inner nothing to spread out, get comfy, stay a while. The internet, or to be more specific, the current dominant visual culture of watching, offers a tempting answer to the fear of being, because watching is a form of non-being. Let me explain. I think many of the greatest and most holy things in life come with a forgetting of self. When I have a great conversation, for example, I can sometimes feel myself enter this third central space between me and the person that I'm talking to. I forget the motives that I may otherwise have in a conversation. What's the coolest or smartest thing that I could say right now? Does this person like me? Am I being annoying? Etc. Instead, me and my interlocutor become conduits to the conversation itself. Those ego-y questions are not relevant. The only relevant thing is what's moving through us and meeting in the middle. Or, to bring it back to reading, when I read, obviously my brain is working very hard. I'm interpreting, thinking, and of course to some extent being. But the internal experience of reading, of entering the flow state with a book, is that of blissful, transcendent submersion. There is no internal monologue, no running commentary. I completely forget myself, and I give way instead to pure, raw experience. I am in the book. I am reacting to it as if it's happening to me because it is. This is true also, of course, for an immersive experience with a film. Think of leaving a movie theater to the cool shock of daylight, re-emerging into the life that you once knew, as if from the warm red womb, only to find it as new and miraculous as the day you were born. When people are leaving a movie theater and they're like, so what did you guys think? You guys had time to think? I think also of my unconscious physical response to great theatrical performances. Think of being so captured by the final scene of a really good play that without even realizing it, you are physically pulled forward in your chair, so much so that when the lights go up and the cast breaks character to bow, the only thing that makes sense to do is to stand, to let the potential explode into kinetic, to finally return to your body to release the noise that has been building in your chest and in your hands. I have felt that on YouTube. I will be the first to admit that. There is some tremendous art on here. I can't count the number of times that I have had this type of experience that I'm describing. This thing that comes with the temporary loss of self, context, awareness of your body. But I have also felt something else here. Something deceptively similar. A shadow of this feeling. It is a kind of disappearance of self, of thought. I think of how many times I've thought, God, I can't wait to just get home and turn my brain off, and then have answered that thought by turning warily to short form video. I don't have TikTok or Instagram, but I use YouTube every day, so I do have access to YouTube Shorts. And entering that world, like entering the world of the movie theater, can indeed quiet the mind. It can soothe into submission the human-y thoughts of all of our responsibilities, our interpersonal conflicts, our worries, our pain. But while the movie theater makes me feel like I've gone for a swim and returned to the shore changed, short-form video genuinely makes me feel like I'm drowning. It feels like losing oxygen. It's this like tightening, suffocating feeling. It makes me feel like my head's in a trash compactor, or like I'm running out of air, or some other vital resource. So what's the difference between a media experience that you disappear into and emerge from renewed, and one you disappear into and emerge from gasping for air? Chapter 4, Agency. Okay, so to do this, I'm going to need to talk about the nature of video as a medium. And I think a useful way into that conversation is to contrast video with the written word, the two great media loves of my life. And I want to be very careful to clarify that as I move forward in this segment, I'm not making any moral claims about which one is better. They are just different, and they do different things. I have equally rich and complicated relationships with each of them, each informed by the other, but ultimately I'm here because I love them both so much that my subconscious has chosen to make them compete. Video, books, and I are in a love triangle that will resolve into a throuple. Mark my words, that's the ending of this story. I'm going to make it happen. So, in the center of our Venn diagram, both a book and a video are stories that you access by interfacing visually with a flat thing in front of your face. Both involve visual processing of something that is only in 2 dimensions. I'll take a moment to acknowledge the existence of audiobooks, which are a valid form of engaging with a text that have been extremely valuable to me. They're just not what I'm talking about today. Already, there's an early distinction we can make. In the case of the book, you move through the flat page, or maybe are extracting from the flat page, a mental image that you are the one to construct. The words prompt you to create actively your own visual experience of the story in your head. Unless you have that thing, aphantasia, in which case, sorry. And also, what is it like to read? What happens in your head? Let me know. But in the case of video, the visual experience happens on the flat thing, on the screen. The brain is still definitely playing an active role. Like, I definitely don't think that video consumption is necessarily passive, but the image is something that you receive, not something that you create. So already someone making a video has access to this entire other wing of influence, domain over the visual character of the piece. Video also is like reality, but flattened. A book utilizes its direct access to the reader's imagination in order to open up worlds that would otherwise be impossible. But video, I think, accesses impossibilities through its flatness, through the fact that it only exists in 2 dimensions. Visually speaking, vastly more things are possible in 2 dimensions than are possible in 3. Think of whatever animated movie captured you specifically as a child. For me, it was The Lion King. Ugh, the color, the energy, the freedom of movement available to those lions. The Lion King couldn't happen in 3D, no matter how badly they want me to believe it can. I guess it can. It's called going to see a production of Hamlet in real life, or I guess The Lion King on Broadway. Even that, though, is a great example of what I'm talking about. You couldn't possibly fit the 2-dimensional Lion King into our 3-dimensional world. You could only adapt it, relay your interpretation of it, insofar as it is possible within your new medium. Video is itself a kind of hyper-reality. It's limitless. It comes with the opportunity for limitless control. You can't know, as a writer, exactly what your readers will picture when they read your work, but as the creator of a video, you know exactly what they will see and what they will hear. That's 2 out of the 5 senses. You can't know how they'll interpret it, but you can control so much of their physical experience. I could do anything to you right now. And I would argue that, as a viewer, handing over that sense of control to the art object is actually a key feature of any experience with video. The magic of video is inherently tied to a loss of agency. In a movie theater, anything can happen to you, and video is such a ridiculously close imitation of real life that whatever it is, if it's done well, it will really feel like it's happening to you. Here's what it feels like to me. Reading a book is like walking through a forest. There will be parts where you're whacking away at twigs and thorns, muscling through thick sections. Sometimes you'll end up retracing your steps again and again. You might even stray from the path and have to find your way back. You might get bored and wander off. But there will be times also when the path is clear and easy, and your job is only to bask in your surroundings as you walk. Sometimes you might start running just for the joy of it. Ultimately, it is your feet that are taking you where you are going. It's your eyes physically moving down the page and onto the next that constitute progress through the art experience. Your path is set, but you determine the pace. You determine whether or not to keep moving forward. When I'm watching a video, I don't feel like I'm making my way through the experience. I feel like the experience is happening to me. Like the video is the one that's moving and I'm standing still, watching the scenery change around me. It is the mover, and you are along for the ride at its pace. Video is arresting. You have agency in that you can pause, rewind, or get off this ride at any time, but your progression through the experience is mediated by the guiding force of a moving, dynamic world. In both of these versions of A Trip Through the Forest, the best experiences happen when you're so immersed in the splendor of the scenery itself that you forget you're the one seeing and interpreting and being affected by it. You fuse with the book or the movie. You're inside of it, and all of your attention is directed on the world around you. But a video keeps playing, even if you stop paying attention, even if you zone out. It therefore contains within it the option of passive engagement. You can't read while doing the dishes, at least I can't, but you can watch, or at least in some part receive a video while doing the dishes. You can have the feeling of the path beneath you just about any time, the feeling of being carried, the feeling of movement without effort, the feeling of choicelessness. It's comforting. I turn to it all the time. So I have a question. If reading a book is a walk through the forest and video is standing still while the forest changes around you, what is the modern experience of short form video as mediated by an algorithm? There kind of isn't a clear embodied representation of it that I can use as a metaphor. It's like if you were in the normal video experience, standing in the forest, watching all of it change, and then a big hand picks you up by the scruff of your neck and tosses you back down in a dungeon. And then it picks you up and puts you back down in a glossy resort with a bathrobe, and then it picks you up and drops you into the sky, and then you're falling, and then it catches you, and then it throws you onto a raft in the ocean, and then, does that sound restful to you? Stimulating, absolutely, but relaxing? Immersive? I don't know. And this is the thing that we do when we come home and flop on the bed after a long day at work. Do you see what's happening? They've taken the loss of agency, the beating heart of video, the magic, and applied it to the act of choosing what video to watch. They have made navigating the world of online video into itself a video. You can see this everywhere, in literally anything that uses an algorithm. Being online at all feels like watching a video, even when you aren't literally watching a video. And that's because online visual culture functions fundamentally on the erosion of our agency. Last week, I was at my job trying to work on a project that I really care about. I use the word trying because I was not working. I was passively listening to a YouTube video through my big noise-canceling headphones. I didn't care about the video and I was not enjoying it. I was just staring at my open document, unable to actually multitask, but unwilling to cut myself off from the media feed, feeling worse and worse by the second, my heart rate going up, my breathing getting fast, and then, just like when I'm wading into cold water, my body took advantage of a brief moment of thoughtless silence and moved by itself. All in one motion, I ripped off the headphones and I stood up. And then I took a couple deep, big, almost like desperate breaths, and I felt myself slowly return to my body, hearing the humming of the fluorescence, feeling the sweat on my brow, placing a cool hand on the back of my neck, and just breathing. That constricting feeling in my head slowly started to ease, and I relaxed. And when I was ready, I sat back down, looked at my document once, and then I put my headphones back on. And I did it all over again. Rinse and repeat. I did it like 4 times. Headphones on, not working, feeling like I'm gonna die, rip the headphones off, and then come down from the panic attack I was about to have. Then put the headphones back on again. I can only laugh. So, obviously, this is the behavior of an addict. I'm perfectly capable of having transcendent, beautiful experiences with the medium of video, experiences that I would never want to give up. But that is clearly not what I was using video for in this moment. I was using it as an excuse to stay still, even when my soul badly wanted to move. I am not only addicted to online video, I'm addicted to the thing that it does for me. And I guess the fact that it allows me to not do other things that I might find scary or intense or challenging. And I know I am not the only one. Addiction of any kind, but especially long-term addiction, like the kind we are all experiencing en masse, can itself really mess with your relationship to your own agency. There is an element of powerlessness inherent to the experience of psychologically or physically depending on something that you know is hurting you. You know you shouldn't indulge in something as much as you want, but it doesn't stop you from doing it at the end of the day. So, I shouldn't quickly becomes something like, I shouldn't, but I have to. And then pretty soon that becomes, I am the kind of person who shouldn't but does. I am the kind of person who walks over my own boundaries. I am the kind of person who cannot trust myself. It can be a really humiliating, impotent feeling to find yourself stuck here again and again. It is not good for your self-esteem. It makes you feel powerless, but also in these moments, you know that the power to change your behavior actually does lie with you. So it's a special kind of like meta powerlessness. It doesn't just say, I have no power here. It says, I could have power here, but I do not use it, so clearly I am someone fundamentally incapable of asserting power at all. It also infects not just your relationship with agency, but with your own consciousness. The mere act of repeatedly looking for an escape, each time you do it, reinforces the idea that you need an escape, that you cannot live with yourself. Now, I would never tell someone who is self-medicating that they're doing something morally wrong, something they should feel bad or guilty about. I'm mentally ill like the rest of us. We're all trying to survive out here, and clearly our collective social media addiction has a self-medicating element to it. I'm not making a moral argument, I'm making a practical one in saying that anything that you do that repeatedly breaks your own boundaries is hurting your relationship with yourself in the long term and in the short term. And with something as intimate as social media addiction, something that concerns your conscious experience of reality, of your life, something specifically designed to invade you and expand inside of you, I worry about a culture that is collectively experiencing these challenges to our autonomy and our relationship to ourselves all at the same time. At a certain point, we have to ask ourselves, who am I handing my agency over to? Who is benefiting from me acting like my agency is something that I do not have, something that I do not urgently need to take back? Whose hand is this? Chapter 5, the billionaires in the room. And I do mean this room. Hi boys. We all know this. I know this isn't news to anyone, but the digital infrastructure we all move through, the apps and their algorithms, they are not neutral spaces. They are engineered to make you feel this way. I mentioned earlier that when the internet entered my life, I conceptualized it as a kind of godlike force. But it isn't. It's run by companies, which are run by just a handful of men who make choices. They made the choice to use slot machine tactics to manipulate our dopamine responses, warp our relationships to pleasure and reward, to make us dependent on their products. They are making the choice to widely incorporate AI into their infrastructure, a tool that applies this loss of agency framework I've been using to thinking itself. And they chose, publicly, loudly, to align with authoritarianism. And is it any wonder? Authoritarianism loves the idea of a populace with a collectively challenged relationship to agency and action. And big tech loves the idea of a populace subjugated, increasingly rationally afraid of the world, increasingly dependent on their products. They work towards the same goal. It was only a matter of time before they aligned officially, and now they have. The internet isn't a god. It isn't a natural disaster. It's not a flood beneath my raft. It's all people who want something from you. Important things too. Time, attention, energy. I'm coming up against a contradiction here, which is that I say all of this, but I also genuinely really believe in the internet as a tool for all of the yelling at clouds that I've been doing today. I have seen staggering social change in my lifetime, for better and for worse, that never could have happened without the internet. Look at the surges of progressivism in the 2010s, the Me Too movement, the Black Lives Matter movement. Look also at the way the right has harnessed the power of the internet to ruinous effect in the last few years. Look at where it has gotten them. This is the world we live in now, and it's going to continue to be shaped by this revolutionary new technology. The internet is here to stay. We can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. So where I fall is that I advocate first and foremost, universally, for a shift in mindset. We need to adopt widely a more active, adversarial, suspicious relationship to the internet. We need to understand the attack on our personal relationships to agency, especially around the media we consume, as a critical, inherently political question of our time. And we need, most of all, to make a serious effort to know ourselves, to track and understand the narratives in our heads. For example, I'm not the kind of person who can do that, or I'm lazy, all I want to do is nothing, I can't wait to get home and rot, or we're cooked, there's no hope, or God forbid, I'm just a girl? Guys! And I do believe from personal experience that to know yourself requires time spent in your own head, in your own life. It requires intimacy with yourself that the internet makes very difficult to achieve. My new goal with the internet is not necessarily to cut it out completely. I find that mindset anyway is a little too black and white for the current day and age, and it contributes to this addictive cycle where you're either all in or all out and swinging wildly between the two states. Instead, I'm trying to craft an offline life for myself that allows me to dip into the online sphere to do specific things, use it in specific ways, and then leave, rather than live there. To use it as a tool that I pick up and put down, not a pacifier I can't pry out of my own mouth. Watching is not the same thing as doing. The internet does offer us both, and we have so much to do. We're gonna just let them have 8 hours of each day? We need those hours, and we deserve to have those hours to actually rest, also, to be with our loved ones, to play, to be bored, and to work. I mentioned earlier that I finished my first book in a long time in October. The book was Piranesi. It's wonderful. It's not a difficult book to read. It's a delicious, speedy little novel that aligns perfectly with my interests and my artistic inclinations. And yet still, I false started it like 8 times over the course of months before I got traction with it and finished it. And when I did, I sobbed for an hour after I closed the book. Yes, because it was a very moving story, but more so because I had felt something vital come back to me. I cried with relief and with grief because I realized that my problem had never been with reading itself. I could read the whole time. It wasn't about whether or not I could read, it was about whether or not I thought I could read. It was about the fact that I thought that because reading got abruptly much more difficult for me, that meant that I couldn't do it at all. It was about the fact that I thought of myself as somebody who fundamentally could not do difficult things. But I could. I can. I am right now. Chapter 6. The screen is the thing that separates. A couple months ago, I was sick and I had to do some red tapey, frustrating adult task. I think it was something to do with insurance. This meant that I spent the entire day in bed on my laptop, avoiding the task by half watching YouTube videos on one side of my screen. Around 4 p.m., it was starting to turn dark outside, and I was feeling that tightening feeling again. And so, when I hit my breaking point, I ripped off the headphones, as I've established I am known to do, and I slammed the laptop shut, and I got outside as fast as I possibly could, and I walked here, and I sat down, and I stared at those trees behind me. And as I did, the strangest thing happened. You know how, generally, you can control which thing to focus on in your depth of vision? I can focus on my finger right now, or I can focus on the camera, and I can like voluntarily switch between them. That's like something that I can like choose to do. As I stared at those trees, my focus hopped from this tree to that tree to this tree to that one to that one to that one without my intention. My eyes just did that, just glitched out by themselves. And what they did after that was glaze over completely, focusing on nothing in particular, just a flat, perspectiveless wash of scenery. I've been noticing lately that whatever eye or brain muscle deals with depth perception, controls what I focus my vision on, that muscle feels tired. It feels weak. I fear that that muscle is beginning to atrophy. Around the same time that this happened, I had recently begun to put words to a feeling that I've had for much of my life, probably about half of my life, probably starting in 2014, 2015, when I got my first smartphone and all of this started. I had started drawing this symbol on everything, on my journal, in sticky notes at work. The symbol was a stick figure inside a box, inside a circle. And I would tell people that the figure was me, and that the circle was the world, and the box was the box. It's the thing that I'm stuck in. I got the sense that there was something standing between me and my surroundings. I felt profoundly removed from everything, like I was always looking through a window, like I was in a glass box. There's a word for this. It's called derealization. I googled it and I hated what I found. A screen is the thing that separates. Think of the folding screen that separates one side of the room from the other, or the screen door separating the bugs from your house, or even a screening designed to identify or separate the cancer cells. A screen protects, conceals, shields, and now displays. We used to see things through screens, but now we see things on screens. The glass box, I suspect, is the spiritual screen given to me by my time with online video. But I also see it as a symbol of the way I have allowed myself to move through the world, as a watcher, as the person at the window, gazing out at the people, the trees. It may feel safer, but it comes at the cost of embodiment, physicality, and dimension. The internet is real life, but it is not three-dimensional life. There is a difference between video and the thing it's capturing. This famously is not a pipe. You aren't talking to me right now, but I'm talking to you. You cannot watch forever. You also need to be. I don't know what your version of that is, but my version is making this video. Psych! You've been watching a personal turning point this whole time. On YouTube, they give you 2 options. You can watch or you can create. I have spent plenty of my time watching, and at this point, I need something about my relationship with this website to change. I'm sick of being halfway in the water. I just want to swim. So here I am. Not seeing, but being seen. Not watching, but doing. Chapter 7, The Way into Cold Water. So, Let's talk strategies. How do you actually get into cold water? If you're someone who gets stuck at the halfway point, like me, how does one get themselves to do something difficult? First of all, don't bully yourself into it. It doesn't work. Don't waste your time. Interestingly though, psyching yourself up also doesn't really work for me either. The same goes for trying to convince myself, trying to rationalize what the correct decision obviously is. Doesn't actually expedite the process. It just keeps me in my head. Maybe there are some people who can think their way into action like that, but I don't tend to be one of them. Something I can reliably turn to is urgency. Think back to when I was talking about wanting to be in the light. Because the light was quickly fading, I had to act fast, so there wasn't time to get stuck in my own head. This is the utility of having a concrete goal, not just long-term goals, but short-term ones too, even like very immediate ones, like the goal of standing in the beam of light. Habit helps quite a lot too. If you go swimming every single morning, you will naturally shed the habit of dwelling on this moment. I noticed this happened to me when I started journaling every day. I used to be pretty afraid to write, and now that just seems silly to indulge. I've noticed though that more than anything, what actually works is letting my body be impulsive. That's the moment I've described at several points in this essay, the abrupt burst of agency at a moment of internal silence. It all comes down to action. Sometimes the answer just is to move. I can't help but notice though that there is one surefire way to eliminate this entire process, and it's to jump in as part of a group. Then the moment happens to all of you at once. It's not something you have to personally work up to and move through. It's just another moment that you move through together. Any solution to this type of thing should be a shared one. So much of our world seeks to divide and atomize us, to put us in our own rooms, in our own boxes, with our own algorithms telling us who we are, rather than relationship and community organically forming our personalities and opinions. Whatever it is that's difficult for you to do, whether it's getting offline, performing, being vulnerable, getting to know yourself, or being brave in any other capacity, find a friend who wants to swim too, look into their eyes, hold their hand, and say, "We are going in together." And then do it. Thank God it is that simple. So how do we feel about the video essay that just transpired? Do we like it? What do we think? I like it. I love it. I'm very proud of it. But what do I think? I think this person is a baby. Hello? Very nervous. Fuck. This is really hard. This is really hard. Okay. And I think they are almost there. Almost. This person is trying to tell a story that hasn't happened to them yet. They're not quite in the water, but I am. I quit watching YouTube in order to successfully complete this project, and wouldn't you know it, a mere few weeks of wielding video as a creative medium and not as a way to outsource all of my thinking, interpretation, and opinions to other people, and as it turns out, I actually do have thoughts of my own. In fact, I have convictions. I filmed that video in late June. It is now September. And a lot has happened in the time in between. We're descending further and further into fascism every day. I got a haircut and I bought this, where is it? This too also, but in terms of the video, this is the one that you want to keep your eye on. And through a combination of these factors and others, I now find myself in a radically different headspace than I was in June when I filmed the original video. I am undergoing a spiritual shattering. I haven't watched a YouTube video in weeks, which might actually be an all-time record. I'm deep in the throes of this creative project, something I once believed myself incapable of. Music sounds the way it used to. I think I might literally have magic powers. I've seen what's underneath the ocean, and the new thesis is this: it is not about me. It's about the water. And I have much more to say about the water. Strap in, we have no choice but to do a part two. Part two, the ocean. In early July, my two roommates and I went to the ocean with the goal of seeing what is underneath the water. And in order to tell this story properly, I'm going to have to be a little more candid about what I'll call my privileged relationship with the ocean. This part of it specifically, the Gulf of Maine, the fastest warming body in the world. My family owns a piece of land on the coast of the Gulf of Maine, and I've been going there for a week or two each summer ever since I was born. Our place operates almost like a timeshare among my huge extended family, and July is the period that my branch of the family gets to go. So it's like this big reunion every year at the same time every year, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, dogs. And because of this yearly touch point, I find myself in the honestly unjustly lucky position of bearing witness to a rapidly changing marine ecosystem. In the same way that a scientist might check in on a site every year at the same time, I have done that with this body of water throughout my life. And the change that I've seen even in my 2.5 decades has been staggering. I've watched animals come and go. The lobsters, the fish, the seals, the birds, everything is moving north. This year, the new arrival was the lion's mane jellyfish. My roommates and I saw this absolutely massive magenta puddle of goop washed up on this nearby beach, and we were of course messing around with the puddle of goop because what else are you going to do?
We should do a thing where we take photos, but through the lens of a dead jellyfish.
Oh.
It's got glitter under it.
It's like the perfect omelet.
My great aunt, who lives up there, is a retired marine biologist, and she told us that the new jellyfish are tropical. They should not be here, and they're toxic. And I was like, oh, we saw those earlier on the beaches. And she was like, did you touch them? And we were like, no, we would never.
What flavor is that?
It looks like a natural strawberry. Yeah.
My great aunt takes the temperature of the water every year. This year it was 65.5 degrees Fahrenheit. That's really high. And I remember the way the water used to feel too. Even in July, it was gray, silver like needles, silver like knives. To submerge was quite literally shocking. It sucked the air out of you. I remember having a thought when I was little that this was probably what the moment of death itself felt like. The great gasp. Terror, panic, excitement, climax, sudden, drastic physical change, sensation so vivid that it feels like it must be some final burst of all that your body has left to give. Sorry. I took sailing lessons up there as a kid. I know. And they made you do a swim test before you could go out onto the water. And I dreaded the swim test like you wouldn't believe. Oh, it was so embarrassing how long it took me to get in. But I still remember the way the boys at the docks played in the cold water, the way they treated it. Swimming to them clearly was a show of masculinity, of stamina, of a specific kind of grit that I absolutely did not have. It was a show of how much physical discomfort one could withstand. Control over your body, mind over matter. How quickly could you get in? How straight could you keep your face when you did? And how long could you stay? I'll say also that this is not how my family swims. Everyone in my family treats swimming as the joy and privilege that it is. So in that environment, I got more and more comfortable going into the water as I grew up, and more tolerant of the cold. And of course the water got warmer, but still my whole life I held this tension with the ocean. I have always been completely in love with it, and also very afraid of the moment of submergence. But I knew that I wanted to and actually kind of had to swim anyway. I felt a sort of romantic obligation to it. This is the origin of my pattern of getting stuck halfway in, of my special awareness of that psychological state. Oh, I hated it. I hate it still. It always felt like I wasn't holding up my end of the bargain. As someone who claimed to love and worship the sea, I couldn't even contend with what it really actually was. But for what it's worth, every time I am stuck in the halfway point, and this is true when I was a kid too, I do eventually submerge. The thought of walking away half wet is simply impossible to me. It's not even an option. But there's another dimension to my fear of and attraction to the water. Even when I did swim as a child, I never wore goggles. Even though I totally could have at any point. Not in the ocean, not in the lakes or the rivers, or even really in chlorine pools. The cold was scary, but the idea of seeing exactly what was beneath me as I swam was a different kind of scary. I have trouble putting words to this because I loved the seaweed and the creatures. I spent all of my time in tide pools. I actively wanted to see what was under the water, but only from outside the water. This brings me to July 26th, 2025. Where is it? The journal. There are 3 journals. Okay, I'll just do this now. There are 3 journals that tell the story of this summer, and they go in this order. First, this one. This was what I was writing during the time that I filmed the first part of the video, and thematically, everything has to do with being halfway in the water. And it's like halfway, you know? Awesome. And then this one is from the center of the summer, the period I'm about to tell you about. And then this is my current journal, which I'm going to finish tonight. And we'll get to all of them at some point. Okay, this brings me to July 26th. 2025. My hair is freshly chopped. I'm feeling untethered. My roommates and I are at my family's place on the rocks. On the way up, we had purchased 2 snorkels, each for $7. The goal of the day was to spend an entire tide cycle on the rocks so that we could see the seaweed both at high tide and midday, and then at low tide in the evening 6 hours later. It's high tide, I have my mask on, I'm scared of course, but something tells me that this is the right time to do it, that I may not have been ready to see the underwater as a child, but I am now. So I put my head under, and I have a hard time putting words to what I saw. It feels like it requires a whole different language. But I can say with confidence, I know exactly what I was afraid of for all of these years. Imagine living your entire life in a single house and then stepping outdoors for the first time in your mid-20s and seeing an old-growth forest. Imagine the terror, the awe of entering a new world for the first time and finding it living, swirling, breathing. I can't believe I was arrogant enough to think that I knew this place, these species of seaweed, when I had only ever known them lying limp on the rocks. I had never seen it as it is, underwater, standing up, and it was unfathomably big. It was the hair of a massive, moving beast. It towered like skyscrapers and swayed like trees, like tentacles. I did not react in a measured way. I breathed in gasps, shallow and desperate. I moved wildly, my whole body flailing in the water, trying not to touch the seaweed monster while also trying to get as close as possible to it, everything collapsing under the tension of those two urges. Usually, when you see something huge and striking like the night sky or like a tall mountain, you might say that it made you feel small, but this made me feel enormous. Brutally aware of every inch of my skin, the placement of my limbs. I was untethered, I was free, I was scrambling, I was ecstatic, I was terrified, I was an animal rattling beneath the great unblinking eye. And then I resurfaced and screamed into my snorkel. Ah! Like that. My friends were like, oh no, what did you see? And I just like could not respond to them. I just like stammered and then I went back underwater. When it came down to it, it's crazy how much of a non-issue the cold actually was. I completely forgot about it. I was busy seeing God. I was busy being surrounded by the unknown, the ancient, and the alien, feeling the full body terror of the ground dropping out from underneath you, you know, like in Finding Nemo when, yeah, that. This was all during high tide, when there's more water and you're further away from the ocean floor, where the seaweed that's exposed by the tide is longer. It's like locks of hair. But low tide reveals different species of seaweed that are much shorter and more varied. It's more like a layer of fur and skin and scabs and things climbing all over. It's wonderful. So 6 hours later at low tide, we prepared to go snorkeling again. The water was cold, it was evening, so the light was fading. For one scary, hollow moment, I thought that I might miss my chance because of my hesitation at the water's edge. And in that moment, I thought, I should at least see it. Even if I don't swim in it, I should at least like see what's down there. And so I stuck my head in, and what I saw knocked me to my knees, and then I was swimming. In fact, I couldn't stop. I felt like I was under a spell. Agency had nothing to do with this. It was like there was this string attached to the middle of my forehead, and something that both was and was not me was pulling my body further forward, forward, forward. This force was certainly outside of me, but whatever the thing was, I agreed with it. It pulled me where I wanted to be pulled. Yes, that, yes, there, yes. There was so much to look at, and I could, and I did. I saw a huge fish whose top half was orange and the bottom half gray. I saw a purple crab on the yellow seaweed. I saw a coral that just looked like an open, singing throat. I could swear I saw it breathing. I remember this, I thought. I am in the earth. I am in before, now, and after. Yes, I remember this. I stayed in the water exploring for over an hour. I don't know how I managed that. When I was a kid, you'd get hypothermia if you did even half of that. When I emerged, I collapsed on the rocks, shaking, exhausted, borderline nonverbal. The only thing I could say was, I feel like I just went to space. I was like Katy Perry kissing the ground. Afterwards, I saw my mom in the kitchen and I tried to explain all of this to her. And I said, I think it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And my mom looked at me in disbelief and she said, you've seen a lot of beautiful things. Yes, I said, I know. So in the first part of this video, I used water as a metaphor for like that which you want to do but have trouble initiating. The life you want to live, the thing you want to do, the project you want to start. And I focused most of my relationship with this on the difficulty of initiation, the cold. And I now see this as a disservice both to the water and to the cold. I've come to understand the cold itself as divine. That rattle, that shake. What else can do that? There's not a lot. And it's disappearing. There will be many times in the course of my life where I will wish for the cold I once knew. And the heat will continue to feel more and more threatening. To many, of course, it already does. I'm quite shielded over here in New England, where we still sometimes have normal winters. Snorkeling showed me that I wasn't just afraid of the cold, I was afraid of how much I would feel, both physically and emotionally. July 28th, I return home, changed. And immediately, I'm in the ponds, I'm in the lakes, I'm in the rivers, and now you can pry my snorkel mask from my cold, dead face. This is the most consequential $7 I've ever spent. On August 3rd, I attend a pool party and I bring my snorkel mask. I'm doing dives, I'm doing somersaults, I'm checking out the bottom. I remember one guy was like, "I love how you're just swimming." And I was like, "Me too!" And in my land life, I'm rattled. I am dislodged. I move through the world on shaky newborn cow legs. Everything feels huge. I feel huge. I'm bumping into things all the time. I'm at once both very vacant and very present, like I'm staring at walls but with genuine interest. I'm having extremely vivid dreams. I think of the seaweed constantly. I can only draw it. I like become useless at work. I'm just drawing seaweed on post-it notes. I feel like I can't quite situate myself in space anymore. The glass box I mentioned in part 1, shattered. Gone. But in its absence, the world I knew seems otherworldly. It all seems brand new now. While in this state, I try to edit my video, but something feels wrong. I can't stomach watching it for some reason. Something's just not right. So I think maybe it's all in my head, maybe I just need a little space from the video, and I keep getting distracted also by how beautiful the clutter on my desk looks. In its disheveled piles, I don't see a problem to solve, I see cinema. And so I get out my camera and I decide to just mess around. Film some B-roll that I might never use, simply to experiment with shooting video from behind my camera, something I've actually rarely done before. So through my camera, I look around the room. My hands are shaking because they do that, and the autofocus is constantly arbitrarily hopping around because I'm an amateur videographer, but I've decided that that's thematically and aesthetically appropriate. I'm getting used to the functions, getting used to the feeling of being able to zoom in on something that I find beautiful, make myself huge and tiny, getting used to the feeling of only being able to look at one thing at a time, the feeling of choosing what that thing is going to be, viewing the objects in my room and their wonderful messiness, their strangeness. Up close, they look so different. And then I realize, wait a minute, I'm snorkeling right now. I'm looking through a clear barrier held up to my eyes, a piece of technology that allows me to see my surroundings in a totally new way. It allows something within me, my attention maybe, to move freely, unbound, ungrounded. It allows me to move with the thing pulling me. I can zoom in and out, getting bigger and smaller in relationship to the object of my gaze. I can wind the gaze around my room in even the upper corners, places that I could not travel on foot. I've perfectly captured the feeling of looking around a new world using a new eye. I'm even like breathing all heavy in the video, which I've spared you from in the edit, but in the footage, I literally sound like I'm breathing through a snorkel. I'm swimming. I'm in the world, the walking, breathing world. I'm a mammal with lungs on land in my home, and I'm swimming. And then the dots just start connecting all at once, and I'm seized by a creative frenzy that I have never known before. Not like this. This is not a video about overcoming the cold in order to swim. This is a video about seeing a world that is brand new and learning to see the world you know as if it were brand new too. This is a video about looking. Part 2, the light. Okay. I want you to try something with me. This is something that I used to do all the time as a kid. Imagine a small ball of light floating in a specific place in the air around you, anywhere other than the screen. It can be as close or as far away as you want, but you should know exactly where it is. Really try to put it in space as much as you can. Mine is over in that corner. Keep your eyes on it as it hovers in the air, even as I'm talking. Now take your ball of light and move it slowly in any direction. Keep your eyes on it. Let it go wherever it wants to go. You can picture it as a firefly or a tiny fairy flying around the room. You can picture it like you're drawing in the air. You can picture it however you want. It's your light. It can speed up, it can slow down, it can twirl and dive. Doesn't that feel something like swimming? Doesn't it feel kind of special, rare almost to do that? Maybe even a bit rebellious? Isn't it in a small way kind of fun? No matter what room you're in, you can always do this. Imagine this exercise in a place you've never been to before. Imagine it during a sunset or in a forest. Imagine your little ball of light ricocheting between the skyscrapers of your city or around the heads of the familiar characters in the bar of your small town. Imagine being in the worst physical circumstances you can possibly imagine and still allowing your light to dance around. This is your agency, expressed at the smallest, quietest possible scale, and it is yours until the day you die. I won't even say don't let them take it from you, because they cannot. They can sway it, they can weaken it, they can lead you to forget about it, but they cannot take it. Your eyes are yours and no one else's. Now, after that light exercise, you may notice a tension emerging. I framed the entire first part of the video around the concept of agency, but as I've mentioned a couple of times now, I think agency might actually not be the word I'm looking for. Agency. It's so forceful. It's so tied to control. If agency is what I'm really talking about, then why do I, in these moments of immersion, in the water, in the camera, why do I still feel like I'm moving at the whim of something? Why do I say that I'm letting the light go where it wants to, rather than making it go where I want it to? I have come to understand attention as something of you that lives outside of you. It lives where your attention is. It lives in the book or in the phone or in your surroundings. When you're actually in a moment of expressing agency and following your instinct, especially in a creative project, it doesn't feel like, I'm gonna do this now. It doesn't feel like an assertion. It feels like this bubbling excitement and curiosity, like, ooh, where are we going? The light has a mind of its own. It's not like you're choosing in every moment exactly where you're going to look out of sheer force of will and your human masculine ability to control your mind. I think letting your light play and letting it take you somewhere, I think that is what agency is. I think that's what flow state is, basically. That's what writing feels like, at least. Like you're both the fish on the line and the one holding the rod. I want to introduce a new word here, and that word is alignment. I think I've spent a majority of my life in a state of profound disalignment. It's like when you put your thumb on a hose and the water like shoots out in all directions. I behave like the water shooting out in all directions. That's the feeling of being at the edge of the body of water or at staring at the blank document. Water butting up against the thumb right before it diverts. It's not like I'm not expressing agency. I'm actually expressing it constantly and in pretty erratic ways. Many of my choices are made in retaliation against the thumb. I move with the energy of someone who just needs to do something. At its best, this has led me on impulsive, wild, formative adventures, and at its worst, it has spelled a tendency towards vicious self-destruction. It is my own thumb, of course. I am both the hose water and the one holding the hose. That being said, I am a very skilled wanderer. I always have been. Especially this summer. Since the shattering, I have noticed this skill really flourish. I say skill and not talent because this is very much something you can learn. I really believe that. I go out on a lot of solitary adventures. I have since I was a kid, and when I do, I think I am particularly keenly aware of my own instinct for intrigue. When I go out wandering, I do so with my nose in the air. If something piques my interest, if I see a mysterious path or alleyway, I follow it without much reservation. If something tells me to walk only on the roots of the trail or only on the curbs of the sidewalk, I do it. I've always resented the idea that wandering is inherently like directionless and arbitrary. Of course, it is by definition purposeless and goalless. Like if you're walking down the street to go to the post office, you're not wandering, you're going to the post office. I need to go to the post office. But to wander doesn't mean you're following no direction or purpose. It means you're following your own direction or purpose. To wander properly is to be in alignment with your light. Not all who wander are lost. Or whatever. I basically think that what I experienced underwater was a far less grounded, far more fantastical version of what I already engage in anytime I am in a healthy relationship with my surroundings. I felt the way I did in the water, I think, because my light and my body were moving under the same set of physical constraints, the same rules. I saw something that caught my light and I could physically go there. The light can move, I mean, we were having it like fly around earlier. The light can move in all directions, all dimensions. Underwater, I can too, so I can like follow it, really follow it. If the lesson from snorkeling was just I saw something beautiful, then this wouldn't really be a fitting or necessary expansion of this essay. No, this changed something for me about looking itself. This realigned me with my light, the thing that moves when my body does not. The thing that travels through the book or the video or through media now once more can travel freely through the world, and I feel able to follow it. The light is an agent, and so are you. But the best things happen when you choose to submit to the light using your bodily agency in favor of the light's agency. I don't know. Isn't that? I don't know. What is water? What are we doing when we go swimming? Water is the source. It's the source of all life. It's mom. It's the beginning. It's the end. It's where we come from, where we're going. There was a time long ago when all life existed only in the water. There was no such thing as going swimming because there was only swimming. But because millions of years ago fish started wriggling up onto shores, we are now land mammals. We made the transition from beings that are in a constant state of exchange with the water that surrounds us to beings that carry water inside of us for as long as we can manage. We are separated from the source. We continue to need it. We cannot extricate ourselves from it, but now we walk instead of swim. I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but I do know this. A fish is not aware of the water. This is like David Foster Wallace. Am I just doing David Foster Wallace?
At least I was raised to view television as more or less my main kind of artistic snorkel to the universe.
Fuck! No, I can't outrun him. A fish is not aware of the water, but because we have left the water, because we have that distance from it, we can now swim. We can go swimming. Swimming is an act of survival that in times of abundance we repurpose as play. There are many situations, of course, when one has to swim in order to not die. In those cases, it's not fun to swim. It's necessary. It is what you must do. But in times of safety, when the water is abundant enough to not exclusively treat it as a drinking supply, when the water is calm enough to not view it purely as a threat to your life, we celebrate the water's presence by swimming in it, by submerging, returning to it. For fun, we swim not because we must, but because we can. This, I think, is the main source of my lifelong swimming angst. I think I recognize my situation when I'm near a body of water as an abundant one. The water is here. It is good and right to swim, so there's like no other choice really but to do so. So the fact that I struggle to initiate it calls into question my own internal sense of value. I know what I care about. It's going swimming right now. So why are my actions not aligned? Why am I having so much trouble aligning them? But back to the fish. A fish cannot be baptized because he has never known anything else, but we can. Because we are not fully in the water anymore, we have the ability to return to the water for the sake of play. Now, walk with me. I have always thought of the internet as almost its own realm, like a separate dimension, a world where the laws of physics work differently. Time travel is kind of possible there. You can relive the same moment over and over again. Sometimes you might get stuck in a time loop. Have you ever been watching a short form video content while doing the dishes or something and the video just loops 3 or 4 times in the background before you can get the soap off your hands to swipe? You can go on Google Earth. You can kind of fly. My brother got really good at GeoGuessr during the pandemic, and he can now tell you like where any photo has been taken just based on the road signs of like places that he's just never been to. The internet lets you see people on the other side of the world. It lets you see people who are dead, and we all know the feeling of navigating the web, don't we? Time is faster, or it feels like it doesn't exist at all. There's this fuzziness to everything except the present. You can't remember what you just did, and you have no idea what you're going to do next. Something connected to you is whizzing around, active as can be in there, but you are completely still, your consciousness on a leash, free to leave your body behind, if only at arm's length. The digital world requires a lot from specific senses and nothing from others. Requires a lot from specific body parts and nothing from others. It requires as little involvement of your body, actually, as physically possible. Apart from your eyes and your ears, you use only the thumb, only the distinguishing human finger, the fundamental tool of technology is necessary in this world. And that's not even technically true anymore. There's VR. Plus, I'm convinced that Google Glasses only flopped because it was pitched a decade too early. Like, who knows what abominations they're cooking up right now? The rules are different in the digital realm. Time is different. Space is different. We move under different constraints, and we are different there as a result. Compare this to being in water, where we perceive both time and space also very differently. In the water, your surroundings are thick and strong and like endlessly, scarily mobile. They hold you. They want to drag you down inside. And it's your job, and only yours, to keep yourself at the surface, to move your body in whichever direction you wish to move, as long as it is not down. I want to argue here that it is useful to think of the digital world as akin to entering a different state of matter. It's part of our world. It is real life. It's not a separate dimension where time isn't real and your actions don't matter. All of this is real, but it's frictionless there. It's not like, it doesn't work the same way. I've got my clipboard. We're gonna do some diagrams. Okay. Alright, so we have water to land, and we have physical to digital. This is an evolutionary timeline, not to scale. So if moving through water is like the most friction-full mode, then moving through the digital world would be the least. So they're like on a spectrum of friction with like normal walking land life in the middle. And then we have the digital over here, and then we have the water over here. I want to argue that as creatures of this strange split reality that we're all dealing with, where we are increasingly immersed in a new texture of living with new kinds of rules, our perceived metaphorical separation from the world, the physical world, allows us now to be able to swim in it. We left the water for the land, and because of that, we can now go swimming. We have partially, metaphorically, kind of emotionally left the physical for the digital, and because of that, we can now swim in the physical. Are you noticing a bit of a problem here, though? Because I'm noticing a bit of a problem here. I have been using the framework of, like, evolution. I've been using the framework of like evolution throughout this section, but that's actually where the metaphor breaks down, because our transition from the sea to the land was a harsh and difficult one, yes, but these biomes are both of the earth. They both already existed. They both can support life. It was a question of whether or not we could become the kind of life that could exist on land, not whether life could exist on land at all. I guess that was the question at one point with like plants, probably. I don't know, ask Hank Green or something. On the internet, I think we are playing out a false version of that transition. There are people who will try to sell you on the idea that we're stepping slowly towards an entirely digital, artificial life form. And I don't think that. Do you think that? I don't think you think that. Not really. And if I'm wrong, then I still don't think that thing can be called life. Life happens in bodies. Your light cannot exist without you. I know this is not possible innately because of how the algorithmic internet seems to try to attempt this separation, and because of how that makes me feel. Life happens in bodies, and the internet is not made for bodies. It is made to be a dark playground for your ball of light. It's a pinball machine. Your light becomes a pinball in there. Where is it? We made this. The sea and the land predate us. We came into them, but we made this. Your phone is an incredible tool. It is also an existential threat to your relationship with the world you come from. Our world, this world, the one that is dying. And this world, the one of the digital image, is not a work of magic. It saps energy from our world. The cloud and streaming, and especially AI, use so much fresh water. Water! The source is being funneled into the void when we desperately need it. Water is not a renewable resource in the same way it used to be. We cannot safely drink the rain anymore. 2025 has been a year of wreckage. Whatever jumped to your mind first, that's what I mean. There is no need to list the wreckages. We all know it. We can all see it, whether you see it at your door or in your hand. This is a dangerous time to be disconnected from our physical surroundings because they are changing, and it is right to witness that. Yes, so that we can work to change it, but also because it is right to witness it. Long before the attention economy, we were already talking about attention as if it's a currency. We pay attention. We intuitively understand that attention is valuable. It's a resource. You need it to get things done in the same way that in this world you need money to get things done. When you play with your attention this way, when you allow it to, move freely around the room as we've been talking about, you'll realize that your attention grows stronger every time. It's like building a muscle. It's like learning to wield a weapon. And also, it's fun to pay attention to your surroundings. This isn't homework. I don't have to force myself to do this. I want to. I just have to remember that I want to. In the heat of the summer, in the very center of this decade, I've experienced a fundamental shift in the way I view my surroundings. Instead of expecting that I can maintain a perfect level of connection at all times and lamenting when I cannot, I have begun to intentionally swim in the world. It is a momentary decision that you can make anytime, even when your phone is in your hand. It does not require quitting anything. It is a minimum act of assertion. It is the smallest possible thing you can do. Just look up. Let your attention wander out in space. It is dying to stretch out. We are creatures of two worlds, two realms, two modes, but they are not equal. It is our privilege and responsibility as creatures of this age, this split reality, to pay attention to and protect the world that we come from. The world that made us, the one that feeds and waters us, not the one that sucks us dry. I wouldn't necessarily say that my world feels more real now than it did in June. I am increasingly unconvinced by reality at the moment, actually. Not because I cannot touch it, not because I feel like it's behind glass, but because it is so vivid, so responsive that I cannot quite believe it. Frequently, I find myself wondering if I'm dreaming. I've even been wondering if I'm dreaming like in dreams. I'll feel the same thing within the dream, like this feels too intentional to be real, so it must be a dream. And then I'll like turn to the other people in the dream and say, this isn't a dream, right? And they'll go, no, I'm here too, so it can't be a dream. I've been resisting the temptation to ask people this in waking life too. Unreality from inside the box is scary. It's isolating and disorienting and claustrophobic. It's like you're one with only yourself. But derealization from outside of the box is like strangely freeing. Here I am one with my surroundings, whatever they are. I'm not trapped in myself. I can go anywhere. It's like a dream. Everything is a symbol. Everything is fluid. Let's return to this thing for a second. What is this? This stands for like derealization as I knew it before all of this happened. The circle is the world, the box is what keeps you from it. You're still a part of the world, as in the box, but the layer like keeps you from fully engaging with your surroundings. Instead, you engage with the world as filtered through the box. You engage with a flat thing. We know all of this. There's life in the box, and that's most of it. And then there's life out of the box. And I found myself in July right here. So this second part to the video quickly begins to take shape. The day I start writing, also a window abruptly shattered at my job. And I was ready to film this. I had all of these diagrams. I had all of these notes. Not a script. No, I didn't have a script, but I had a lot of notes. I even had this idea that I was going to play an exaggerated character of myself. Imagine if I did that. But divine intervention came in the form of getting COVID at a Mountain Goats concert a mere few days before I had to move. Another piece of the puzzle of this summer is that I had to do a lot of moving around. I've lived in like 3 different places, visited a lot of people. I didn't stay in the same place for more than like a week, maybe 2 at any one time. When I was sick, I considered filming the video to be an equally pressing priority to like successfully moving house while having 102-degree fever. Down to the day of the move. Filming the video was still on my to-do list. I like have it here. Now, while I do sorely wish that there existed footage of me sweating buckets while barreling through what at the time amounted to a series of loosely connected bullet points and diagrams of shapes inside of other shapes, I am ultimately glad that this is not the version of the video that made it to the aluminum screen. It would have been crazy. It would have been largely incoherent. Entertaining maybe, but even that, I'm not so sure. So in defeat, I set my sights solely on the task of moving, and thank God, because that was quite a task. Also, there was a bat flying around the house that we were moving out of too. It was like a whole thing. So my home for the next 2 weeks was to be the house of a very sweet neighbor with 2 dachshunds. I was not interested in exposing my very sweet neighbor to the bugs, so instead of going straight there, I checked into a motel for 2 days and waited out the remainder of my contagious period in a small room with the curtains drawn. There, in the sunless days of clean sheets and strange dreams, I felt removed from time itself. Even when I pulled back the curtains to see what time of day it was, I could see in the distance, out the window, a small clock tower with a broken clock. It was here that I veered hard back into the world of online video entertainment. I have very little memory of what occurred in the motel. I know I was on YouTube. According to my journal, also, I watched the pilot episode of The Simpsons, and I loved it. I have no memory of that. August 16th, I move into the sweet neighbor's house. As I relapse into the digital world, I also relapse into other things. First it's weed, then it's alcohol, then I start binge eating uncontrollably. Every night just flattens into exactly what it used to be. A frenzy that only wanes when I am too full, too stoned, or too drunk to move. Online video largely soundtracks these moments. Video is arresting. It's strange that even during a relapse of like actual drugs, soft trip, but you know, I felt psychologically way more affected by my re-entry into the social internet. It was deeply troubling to me. At once I felt both the the overwhelming like dopamine wave akin to what I felt when I first started using the internet at 14, but it carried with it the decades worth of knowledge of what this does to me. The wave contained more than pleasure this time. It also contained dread, fear, defeat, shame. The box had returned. The story of this project reaches its nadir when I temporarily delete Adobe Premiere off of my laptop so that there is enough disk space to continue watching Drew Gooden review a new best worst movie ever. August 28th, instead of writing my script, I begin drawing mammals. The mammals say it's okay to rest. In the evening, I attend a social event in a big concrete lot where there is chalk available, and I draw a massive mink on the ground that uses up 3 sticks of chalk. It's probably 30 feet long if you include the tail, which I do. September 1st, I move back here. This is like where I usually live. I just have to vacate during the summer. My own self-imposed rules were as follows: no YouTube, no alcohol, and no weed except when strictly necessary. And most importantly, I have to write the video. Mid-September, the mammals return, and this time, they're pregnant. On September 11th, I write, there's something about my feverish need to draw underwater things, and these mammals that show up when I need to rest, when I need an easy and mindless thing to draw, almost as if to say, let's touch the land for a moment. And then there's the fact that I often draw them as if they're floating or swimming. I've drawn them in like bubbles underwater, which I think became the pregnancy thing. Though they actually represent comfort and familiarity, land life, I keep putting them in water. Clearly, I long for a middle ground of some kind. Mid-September, I'm pretty much back on track, so one question remains. With all of the vices for the moment eliminated, with nothing left to do but write the video, what is the thumb still doing on the hose? Why am I still avoiding the task if I am so prepared for it and so excited by the project itself? What am I afraid to do? I was interested to learn that the thing I was avoiding was not actually writing, it was reading. It was reading the things that I had written, just like at the beginning. This was still the final piece. I had done plenty of writing throughout the summer, like an overwhelming amount of writing, actually. The task that remained was to sift through everything that had poured out of me and assess it for what it was. Now, I know a lot of people who journal as a means of self-reflection, who revisit their journals periodically as a way to learn about themselves, their patterns, their habits, their relationships, etc. I am emphatically not one of those people. I journal as a means of self-expression and as a means of documentation. I love to revisit my journals visually by like flipping through them. I mean, look at them. But I do not actually often read the words. In the same way that I once swam without goggles, I journal without ever looking backwards. It's interesting to me that even though this summer I completely cracked through the barrier of resistance to the blank page, I haven't yet cracked through the barrier of resistance to the full page. I'm no longer resistant to self-expression, but there remains a resistance to self-reflection. It's like the barrier had moved up one step in the creative process. So, like, what is all of this? Why don't I want to look at myself? Well, it's shame. Obviously. Whatever. Can we talk about how much this guy hates himself? Shame, shame. Look at how this video drips in it. I'm embarrassed to say that. I'm beating myself up for that. I'm nothing. I'm nothing. Jesus Christ, what a terrible thing to say about yourself. If you resonated with that, I need you to know it isn't true. This person hates herself so much for not being able to like make her way out of the strange, unprecedented reality of the moment. But look around. Who can do that? We all know one person with a flip phone, but like only one, right? As previously mentioned, I had to clear a bunch of storage space on my computer so that my like hard drive had enough space to like run the video editing software, which meant I went through a lot of like old big videos, and I found this one from my high school production of Godspell when I was a senior. I had totally forgotten this happened, but we did this thing for fun on one Saturday before an actual show where we ran through the show with the cast and the crew having switched places. So the crew was on stage and the cast was, you know, in the wings trying not to like break things. And this was a crazy watch because I thought of myself as having so much stage fright, and I definitely did. But at every possible moment in this video, I am absolutely leaping at the chance to play the main character, Jesus Christ. Here I am getting crucified in front of a backdrop that I painted. I know all of the choreography. I know all of the words to every song. I'm like reining in everyone to make sure they're like doing it right. Like it's insane. What did this kid say? Something about like feeling like a profound sense of rightness behind the screen and behind the wings. And it's all of it. Pure cope. This bitch wants to be on stage so bad. And I don't think shame is unrelated to this discussion. In fact, I think it's weirdly kind of the center of it. Shame is useful in moderation. Social cohesion does matter. It's valuable to have an inner instinct that cringes at that time that you laughed at that funeral because it trains you to avoid that behavior so as not to upset any grieving loved ones at any future gatherings of that nature, should they occur. It can be a pro-social force. However, I think the culture has taken this force and run with it so far that it has become an antisocial force, one often wielded for sinister purposes. As a kid, I was this strange combination of like introverted, but not exactly shy. I needed my alone time, and that remains true, but in the right setting, I was actually a pretty big social presence. I loved being around people, I loved talking, I was good at it, and also, especially when I was young, I had this remarkable capacity for just shameless verbal expression. Especially in classrooms. I would take up objectively way too much space because I was so excited to answer the questions and ask new ones. I have a couple of extremely formative memories from the ages of like 7 and 8 where I would be doing this shameless self-expression and then abruptly become aware of how the room was receiving me, which is to say I was being annoying, I was being cringe, they didn't like me. And the sensation of shame was so overpowering because of its previous absence. I was like 0 to 100 with shame for a while. There was like no in between. The creative process demands that you first word vomit, get a bunch of ideas on paper, whether or not they are good, whether or not you are certain you believe them. This was the first stage that I unlocked this summer. It was a summer of feverish, reckless, constant output. When I wasn't writing, I was drawing. When I wasn't drawing, I was singing. When I wasn't singing, I was dancing. One gateway down. So, what's the resistance? The resistance was that I didn't want to read my journals. But then I did. It wasn't hard. And they're wonderful. They're so good. And the way the three of these form this just undeniable narrative. This one being all about halves. And then this one has like a big shell on each cover and it's just all like raw fucking seaweed stuff. I'm really, really in it. And then in this one, there's a mammal on it. There's a fox on the cover and it's like surrounded by an ocean of blue. How like perfect is that? It's like totally a happy accident that happened. I sort of dip back into the box at the end of this one and in the beginning of this one, and then I recover from it as I read the past 3 journals and realize that like I'm good at what I do and it wouldn't even matter if I was bad at what I do because I just have to do it. So I read my journals, I felt a profound kinship with myself, and then I started actually like reading books again. It's great. I'm reading again, like voraciously, the way that I used to read as a child. How wonderful is that? I've rediscovered the thing that my light yearns to do. A friend of mine lent me this book over the summer. It's called On Poetic Imagination and Reverie by Gaston Bachelard. I should look up how to say his. Let me look up how to say his name.
Build a website you love.
I don't want to.
Wix.
Ugh.
Pronouncenames.com.
Bachelard. Okay, I'm not gonna. Bachelard. That's what we're going with. On Poetic Imagination and Reverie by Gaston Bachelard. This guy fucking rules. And also this book is about me. Bachelard's whole thing, at least in this book, is the relationship between the imaginary and the real being one of mutual reciprocity and response. He talks about the aliveness of images, but he actually also distinguishes between images, the thing you're seeing now, the image, the thing that is not the pipe, and the imaginary, the human capacity for dream and reverie, the image that can exist within the human mind. He also specifically links our imagination to language, to reading and writing, which is what's what I was saying in part 1. I think what I've experienced this summer was 1, a reintroduction to my imagination, 2, a distancing from images that I merely receive and do not create, and 3, the process of turning my own imagination into images. He also has this practice of psychoanalyzing the elements, like fire, earth, water, and air. He'll consider a poet or thinker to be like in their own specific dialogue with an element. He says that Edgar Allan Poe is in conversation with water, but like a still black water that threatens to swallow. He says that Nietzsche is like the cold, clear, thin air at the top of a mountain. Obviously, I think this is so awesome. Anyway, he says, the separation of contemplation from will does away with a characteristic I would like to emphasize, which is the will to contemplate. Contemplation, too, involves a will. Man wants to see. Seeing is a direct need. Curiosity gives dynamism to the human mind. Couldn't have said it better myself! My friend got it from a used bookstore, and the previous owner has done these, like, insane intricate doodles in the margins that I'm like 100% convinced represent some sort of secret code. So cool. That's cool. Wait, what did I write here? Let's see what this is. A combination of luck, privilege, and mindset ? Has led me to, wait, this might be good, hang on. A combination of luck, privilege, and mindset has led me to live what I feel is an unusually enchanted life. I have the instinct that sharing this life and the way I see it may be valuable to people in helping enchant their own lives, or at the very least, the very most, it will be beautiful. I consider myself a witness to all of this. Yes, I am the one who wrote this essay, but I am only rearranging what was given to me by my loved ones, by the world. This book, the lake, the ocean, even the word alignment came from a walk with a beloved coworker of mine. At every turn, at every point of stasis, the world has gently nudged me towards this day, these words. And so, when I look back on the moments this summer that I spent psychologically stuck halfway in, how can I possibly pathologize that? How can I be so certain that I should have done anything differently when the things I did led me here? Why must I conceptualize this inner resistance as a fault rather than a signal that something was not right yet? I'm wondering what I really think now about agency. Forcing oneself to do things is obviously necessary, even in the most enlightened people. We all have to do things that scare us sometimes. But to a truly aligned person, it doesn't feel like force. It feels more akin to a compulsion. Not I must, but I must. Not I should, but I will. It's a terrible thing to feel like you have no choice. It's a beautiful thing to feel like you have no choice. The difference, I am not in charge of myself because something is taking from me, versus I'm not in charge of myself because something is compelling me forward. It's the difference between unwilling submission and worship. They have set it up so you are performing a version of worship, the shell of it, without worship, the light, the reason, the guide. Okay, what else do we have to say? I think this is the central tension many of us find with social media and the digital world. We realize that the way we live our lives, the time, the attention, shares many of the traits of worship. We act in service of it. We devote our time and attention and ideas to its continued thriving. We watch, we do all of these things not out of conscious choice, but out of a mass compulsion. We feel that we must. But where worship comes from within, this comes from without. Well, it all comes from without. But you worship something you believe in, agree with, wish to devote your life to. And looking around, I think most people do not feel that way about social media. Okay, cool. That's great. Okay, let's move on. What I've also noticed throughout this trilogy is that I'm obviously so loved. I'm so loved by the world, by my family, my friends. The world loves me. Why have I refused for so long to see myself the way the world sees me? Shame is not an evil feeling. It serves a purpose. It has the best of intentions. But shame as a mindset will stunt you. It will deceive you, and it will make certain that you never get to see yourself for what you really are, a miracle and a miracle maker. It's not that I have a problem with writing itself. My problem always has been with reading my own writing, watching my own footage. I can make stuff all day, but my fear is of the inevitable. It's of seeing myself in the things that I make. But now, why would I be afraid of that when it is not about me? It's about the world I love, and in fact, it is about me because I'm a part of and a reflection of the world I love. The water flows through me, in and out. That is my purpose. To make art, you have to genuinely, wholeheartedly believe in your own creative vision. You have to want your ideas to be seen and heard. You have to think that they are worth that. And in order to make the work at all, you have to pay attention to your light. You have to follow it. I think that every single person who has a digital life should make a commitment to continually struggle against the creep. It's not just an option to swim, it is right to do so. Take breaks. Make them as long as you can. Swim until your thumbs prune up. Return when you have to, when you must, but while you are in the water, be there. Look around. Remind yourself of your home. Get back in touch with the thing pulling you forward. It's water. How are you? It's like 2 a.m. Okay, I have one final water anecdote to impart before I leave. For real this time. A couple of weeks ago, I went with some friends to visit our buddy in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont. There, we spent a whole day on Lake Willoughby, a glacial lake with shallow white beaches that stretch out forever. I will recount the story of that day for you now. The night before, I had one of those dreams that's about the day you're about to have, and it was extremely vivid, and each time I woke up, I would fall back asleep and the day would begin again and again, and each time I was like, okay, the previous events of the dream, I had been dreaming, but now, finally, it's actually real, and then I would wake up, fall back asleep, and drink the same thing again. So during the dream, we went to the lake, which we were planning to do. I knew that we were going there, and I saw a convention of what I thought were massive standing birds flapping to reveal, impossible wingspans, but then it was actually a convention of people in elaborate bird suits and stilts. So when I woke up for real, I had a hard time convincing myself that I wasn't dreaming because it felt no different. Imagine how I felt when we pulled up to Lake Willoughby, a place I have never been to in my life, and it was exactly the same lake as the one in my dream. No birds, no people dressed as birds, but other than that, the same landscape and the same feeling. So we're off to a crazy start. The lake is flanked by 2 big mountains. mountains. The glacier that is now the lake used to be wedged in between the mountains, and now it lies peacefully in its new form in the valley that it created. Throughout the day, one of these mountains was cast in shadow and the other in light. It kept reminding me of a chessboard at the beginning of a game, a light and a dark side facing one another, separated by an unwalkable expanse. We settled on a small secluded shallow beach. The water was very clear and the sand was white, and there were hundreds, I'm sure thousands, of tiny fish that would follow you wherever you went and nibble at the dead skin on your feet if you stood still long enough. I swam in my snorkel mask, of course, and every once in a while I would turn around and I would see this cloud of fish at my tail, and again I felt like a giant pursued by fairies, hyper aware of my edges and their closeness. It was almost claustrophobic in this water, so shallow that there was barely room for my body. I was very clearly in the fish's domain, and it operated on their sense of scale, not mine. Even after a whole summer of seeing underwater, the fear remains part of it. I suspect it always will, and always should. I couldn't stay in for too long. The water was warm, but I got cold very quickly. I think because I had just had COVID, and also because it's fall now. The leaves are changing, and even on warm days there is this underlying chill. And so rather than force myself back in, I spent the rest of the day wading in the shallows, or exploring the shores, or just sitting and watching the water move. I kept my journal in one pocket of my raincoat and my phone in the other. It was a day of profound alignment. Looking at the mountains, what I wanted most was to draw them, and so I did. Thinking about the water, what I wanted most was to write about it, and so I did. When I got antsy, what I wanted most was to explore the small cove nearby, and so I did. When I saw how the fish in that cove literally seemed to glitter, how the light reflected beneath them in like literal four-pointed stars, what I wanted most was to film them, and so I did. When I accidentally scared the fish away with my presence, what I wanted most was to sing to them, to ask them to come back to me, and so I did, and they came. The thought occurred to me several times throughout the day that I am an artist. Not I could be if I tried, if I applied myself, not I have the potential to be. I am. When left to my own devices, when aligned, the thing that I cannot stop doing is creating, expressing. There is no need anymore to stand in the wings, looking longingly at the performers, wondering what life would be like if I had that essential thing that I thought was missing. The spark, the light, the thing that makes one make things. I have that. I am already here. The feeling was like a warm rain. I felt all of the gratitude for this fact at once. Years of self-love suppressed came flooding back to me, and as I watched the water, I swam in this feeling. The way light behaved in this shallow water was just mesmerizing. The light appeared in thin, precise, concentrated ribbons that rippled and danced. And when anyone walked in the shallows, these ribbons of pure light would emanate out from their legs in concentric circles, just like the ripples of a pebble in a pond. It occurred to me at one point that from above, I looked just like this. Towards the end of the day, my roommate and I were leaning down close to the water to investigate a ladybug that had landed on the very tip of a piece of driftwood, and I realized too late that my jacket pocket containing my journal had been dipping into the water. Now, as a little bit of background about me, this has for basically my whole life been one of my biggest fears. It's not the first time it has happened either. There is precedent for this to spell complete disaster. But strangely, in the moment, I didn't feel out of control. I felt activated, aligned. Okay, I was thinking, okay, this makes sense. Of course this would happen. This had to happen. It's right that this happened to this journal on this day. Of course this is where the story goes. I was panicked, of course. I mean, I didn't exactly know yet how much I had lost or would lose, but through the panic, I had clear eyes. I knew exactly what to do. I took my place on my blanket and I fetched my phone and I filmed a video of me flipping through the entire journal. I love this video. I love this video so much because it immortalizes both the object itself in case of further damage, but also the exact headspace of the moment. I clearly begin in a kind of panic, purely using video as a means to an end, the end being to preserve as much as possible, but quickly you can feel this change in the way the camera moves and in my quiet little breathless exclamations throughout. Quickly, this clearly becomes an act of exploration and revelation. My hand stops shaking so much. The camera approaches the page in a more artistic way. I am clearly turning each page, excited for what I am about to uncover, excited by the way my art has been changed by the water, excited to see what it has communicated to me about my life, my project, myself. Because look at that stain. Look how beautiful that is. My journal, by the way, is completely fine. Yes, it's been changed irreversibly by the water, but miraculously there's nothing that I can't make out. Nothing is completely lost. And to call it water damage, well, that's just incorrect. The way the water stain interacts with each page is so full of humor and beauty that I cannot help but think of it as imbued with some sort of ancient intention. Communication from the water in my direction. I consult my own journal now. I learn from it. Like, look at this page, which I initially drew as a group social activity with my cousin and her roommate earlier this month. It's a graph documenting my relationship with shame over time. As you can see, I have been all over the place. Look at the stain. Look at what the stain communicates about shame itself. It's like, this is a whole fucking video. This period of like radically low shame over this last summer, this is the period that dips beneath the water. This says very clearly, shame keeps you from the water. They are in conversation. Shame, when it is my North Star, keeps me from the life I'm trying to live and the world that I love and the art I am trying to make. Let's try another one. I mentioned that I've been drawing a lot of mammals and that they are telling me that it's okay to rest, representing the fact that I am a being that breathes air, that I cannot always be in a transcendent flow state, and that sometimes I need to be on land. Well, let's see what God has to say about that. God says that the mammals can swim, which we knew that. That's what the video's about. To me, this communicates that while the mammals say it is okay to rest, they themselves do not only rest. We are beings who can and should swim. The water itself has affirmed my thesis. I love this guy also who I gave big deep sea diving boots and a snorkel mask, and now he is literally wading into the water. My crane too is now wading in a marsh, as they really do, and my heffalump is drinking something from the swamp. There are so many places also where the water fills in its own role in the image. Like, look at this picture that I drew on the beach before my journal got dunked of the birds from my dream and the lake. I didn't finish drawing it because we arrived at the lake and I was like, cool, so I can have premonitions now. And here with the stain literally fills in the remaining lines of the lake that I was visually representing with the water from the same lake. The hell? The water stain also told me when I was going to film this video, September 28th, the only weekend date on my sobriety tracker calendar that is fully submerged. Okay, I guess I'll do that then. That's today. And what's crazy is also, it's the day I would have chosen regardless, because I told myself that I had to film by the end of September, and the 28th today was the last day in September that I didn't have work, and I leave everything to the last possible minute. So in fact, the water merely predicted the filming date of this project. And I have saved the best for last. Eagle-eyed viewers may have noticed that the stain on each page mirrors the exact shape of the mountains that flank Lake Willoughby. Even in this drawing of the mountains that I did on that day, before the journal got wet, the water stain humbly echoes the shape of the mountains just beneath their image. The glacier made those mountains. The glacier is the water. The water made the mountains again out of itself. Two extremes united by their middle ground. Land and water united in one image. Page and screen united in one image. Bachelard writes, a lake, a pool, still water, each makes us stop at its edge. It tells the will, you shall not pass. You have to go back to looking at distant things, things beyond. While you were running, something here was already looking. A lake is a great, tranquil eye. A lake absorbs all the light and makes a world out of it. The world is already contemplated, already represented by the lake. The lake, too, can say, the world is my representation. Near a lake, we understand the old psychological theory of active vision. For the active vision, it seems that the eye projects light and illuminates its images itself. We understand how the eye might have the will to see its visions, how contemplation might also be an act of will. The cosmos, in some ways, has a touch of narcissism. The world wants to see itself. Video is not my enemy. It is a tool that can be used by anyone, for any purpose, and that includes me. Video immortalizes perspective. If you don't believe in your own perspective, then you can use video to habitually escape it. If you do believe in your own perspective, then you can use video to capture and spread and honor it. I never thought of my perspective as something worth immortalizing, not sincerely until I leapt into this project, which made me ask, how do I see the world? Well, this is how. Largely in images. The light, the circle, the box, the water. God, it is so wonderful to have a place to put the visual art that I'm constantly effortlessly churning out. Words and pictures. I have found, you could say, a happy medium. Sorry. This video, this footage of me reading a book that I wrote on camera, one hand turning the wet pages, the other one on my phone, preserving the moment, digitizing, immortalizing. This is what video can do for me. I have seen what it can do to me, but this is what it can do for me. It can put me both in front of and behind the camera. It can allow me to be that great tranquil eye, the water that just wants to see itself. I'm so grateful that I tried. I'm so grateful to know all of this now. I'm so grateful to finally understand this thing that has been happening to me for 10 years. I know that I'm in the water right now. I know that there will be times when I am not. I know that at some point in the future I will find myself halfway in again, staring at the thing I could be doing, the world I could be exploring, and I know that I will feel the familiar resistance and I will stay for a minute longer, and a minute longer than that. Now, I speak directly to that version of myself, past and future, the version of myself behind the glass. Yes, you. I can see you. To you, I have only one thing to say. I love it here.
Do you have Pahone on you?
I do have Pahone on me. Please taking video of fishes.
Well, this is reassuring because I was like, God, someone's got to capture this, but I know Liz will do it justice.
You're gonna really love what I've come up with.